Donald Trump's cabinet complained about defending a freeloading Europe in a secret group chat that was accidentally shared with a reporter. You might have heard this. It's leading the bulletins here on LBC. President Trump was quizzed about it yesterday.
I don't know anything about it. I'm not a big fan of The Atlantic. To me, it's a magazine that's going out of business. I think it's not much of a magazine, but I know nothing about it. You're saying that they had what?
They were using Signal to coordinate on sensitive materials and
having to do with what? Having to do with what? What were they talking about?
With the Houthis.
The Houthis? You mean the attack on the Houthis? Right. Well, it couldn't have been very effective because the attack was very effective, I can tell you that.
Yes, so just to explain that The Atlantic is where the editor-in-chief was included in that Signal group, so that's why President Trump has it in his sights. And the view now of Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth.
You're talking about a deceitful and highly discredited so-called journalist. Nobody was texting war plans, and that's all I have to say about that. Right, Thank you. That's it.
Let's get the full background of the story and try and level the measure of embarrassment from Scott Lucas, who's Professor of US Politics at University College in Dublin, joining me now. OK, the background of level of embarrassment, Scott, how would you rate it? Good morning.
This is one of the most serious national security lapses in recent memory in the United States. The core of this, Nick, is that as the Trump administration was preparing to strike what's called Houthis. Those are the rulers of part of Yemen 2 weeks ago. So they were going to bomb their positions. They were going to bomb other areas of the country. And indeed, more than 50 people were killed. They were discussing the war plans. And despite what the Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said there, he did text those war plans on what's called Signal. Now, many of your listeners may use Signal. It is okay for personal communications. It's considered to be encrypted for personal communications, but it is a no-no to discuss any type of war plan on any type of messaging application on a phone. That should only be done in a secure facility, which is protected against anybody trying to intercept or eavesdrop on this. But despite that restriction, that prohibition, you had the Vice President, JD Vance, you had the National Security Adviser Mike Waltz, you had the Secretary of State Marco Rubio, as well as the Defense Secretary, all chatting about this, and incredibly having invited into this Signal group the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic magazine, a very well-respected reporter and analyst named Jeffrey Goldberg. And what happened here is that Goldberg, who could not quite believe this was authentic. He thought that they was being scammed, but as he sees the text go through, and then as he sees the war plans being posted, he realizes this is authentic. It is authentic. He left the group. He notified them that he had been in there. Had he not notified them, they may not have noticed that he had been in there. And then he revealed in The Atlantic in a very detailed article, which I encourage everyone to read, the exact extent of the discussion without revealing, I must emphasize, any of the top secret information about the war plans itself. There's a couple of stingers on this, Nick, which are very, very interesting. You've mentioned the fact that a number of the officials were trashing Europe. But I think what's even more striking about this is that one of the people who was in the conversation was Donald Trump's envoy, the real estate developer Steve Witkoff. When he was added to the Signal group, he was in Moscow in discussions. He was waiting to speak with Vladimir Putin, right? Mm-hmm. So in other words, while U.S. officials are discussing bombing Yemen, they have included an official in a discussion on a platform which the Russians could monitor, Steve Witkoff, as he's in the Kremlin.
Let me ask you this. The defense from Donald Trump in these situations is, I don't know what you're talking about. The other side is mad and bad. Let's move on. How long can he get away with that?
With the American public, or at least those people that support him, perhaps you can just play trash the media and shout fake news. But there's two things here that I think mitigate him getting away with it this time. First is this isn't fake news. And the fact that Pete Hegseth openly lied to say that, no, nothing happened here, that only compounds it. The second thing here is, while the American public may not know that much about Yemen and know that much about, the idea of how these war plans are discussed, I think people who are in the national security sector, and that includes Republican congressmen, are going to be very, very unsettled by this. And I wonder how much longer Republican congressmen are going to give the Trump administration a blank check